We're going to allow folks a few minutes to join in, and we will be starting shortly. Thank you. All right, everyone, we're going to start today's webinar. So thank you for joining us. I am your host, Sarah Rosero. I'm a community engagement coordinator with Snohomish Conservation District. And as we did events in person before COVID, now we're doing everything online. But just want to send out the sentiment that we really miss seeing you all in person and engaging and holding more workshops outside of the online lifestyle we're now living. So with us today is also Carrie Brausieck. Her picture was on here, so it's so weird that it's not showing. But Carrie's going to be working the back end for us, so if you have any technical issues, please feel free to chat her. So you're joining us tonight for REDA, some renewable energy development assistance, and we're going to be talking about the process and what this grant can really bring to your rural business or your farm. This is so crazy. My pictures are not showing up. You can't see, but how you will be interacting with us tonight is on the chat function will be those technical issues. And then with if you have any questions, you'll be typing them into the Q&A tab. And we will get to your questions at the end of the presentation. So Snohomish Conservation District, if you haven't heard of us before or haven't worked with us before, we offer lots of free technical assistance. We do some cost sharing. We have different teams like sustainable agriculture, which Carrie's a part of, and habitat, also some community conservation. And we really just take the whole breadth of natural resources and try to make them better across the county and Camino Island. So some of the upcoming events we're having. So right now we're in Orcatober. So celebrating Orca Recovery Day was last Saturday on the 17th. And then some upcoming webinars are going to be Living with Beavers next Tuesday. And then next month we have a Streamside Landowner webinar for the Stillaguamish watershed. So tonight we're really excited to have Carrie with us, and she's going to be talking about REDA, but also some other elements that can go into having solar on a farm or other renewable energies and how you can really make that work for you. So a special thank you to Nick and Melissa Pate from Raising Cane Ranch for hosting us on their farm, allowing us to film. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And I'm going to kick it off to Carrie to start her webinar.
Okay, can everyone see that? Is
Yeah,
that looking good, Sarah? Okay.
looks great. Thanks, Carrie.
So my internet is a little bit spotty today, so hopefully it will hang in there for us. So I do apologize if I cut out a little bit, but we're gonna make the best of this and see how well we do. So I'm here this afternoon to talk about the Rural Energy for America program, or REAP. And just to give you guys, well, I guess oops. A little bit about my background. I'm a natural resource planner with Snohomish Conservation District. My degrees are in environmental management and environmental policy. And I run an agroforestry program at the district. I work on our ag resilience plan. I work on a lot of carbon farming techniques and climate change strategic planning for the district. So that's a little bit about my background and what I do at the district. And to give you guys an idea of what we're going to talk about today, so I want to give everyone an overview of this program, talk about renewable energy, why it's important, why it's a program that's currently being funded in the state. And then we're going to do a virtual farm tour. This originally was intended to be an in-person farm tour at a farm, a local farm, talking to someone who went through the program and why they went through it, touring their farm a little bit. But as we all know, with COVID, we're doing all of this online. So luckily, my colleague Sarah, who just spoke, and myself went out to Raising Cane Ranch several weeks ago, and they allowed us to do sort of a virtual farm tour that we can share with you all today. So we're going to do that. And then I will get into a little more of the details about this grant, about how you can apply, what the financial incentives are, and what kind of assistance we can offer. So, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end. So just to give a basic overview, we're talking here about the Rural Energy Development for Washington program. And this is funded through the federal program, which is the Rural Energy for America program. And this provides grant funding to the states to develop these programs, to provide grant assistance. And what this grant money does is it helps agricultural producers or rural small businesses pay for the installation of alternative energy on their properties. It also helps pay for energy efficiency upgrades as well. So there's actually a fairly broad spectrum of things that could be covered under this grant money. It's not just solar. Although solar is one of the main things that this grant is used for. So this program currently in Washington State is run through a partnership between Pierce Conservation District, our conservation district, Snohomish Conservation District, and the nonprofit Spark Northwest, which is based out of Seattle. And this is a well-established statewide program at this point. This has been going on for several years. Spark Northwest is the one who started this program in this state. And now Snohomish has just joined this program in the last year. And I want to emphasize that it is a statewide program. So although we are the Snohomish Conservation District and we traditionally focus our resources on Snohomish County, anyone statewide, any farmer, any rural small business statewide could contact me for assistance with these REAP applications. So this is a statewide program. Anyone from east of the mountains, west of the mountains, out on the peninsula, out on the islands, anywhere. So open to everyone in the state. And what we provide through this program is we provide education, we provide technical assistance, and we provide grant writing assistance for these alternative energy or energy efficiency upgrades. And just to talk a little bit about the map you're seeing, just to give an idea of what the program has done so far, we've got some numbers, and the dates of these numbers range between 2017 and 2019. So this is a snapshot here of a 2-year period. And in that 2 years, our program has been able to offer 277 technical assistances, 87 REAP grant applications, and about 3 million kilowatt hours of clean energy generated, which sounds like an arbitrary number. What does that mean? So just to give an idea, that equates to about 2,700 acres of US forest growing for 1 year, or the electrical use of 360 homes for a year, or taking 460 cars off the road. So making some progress through this program in reducing fossil fuel-based energy. So just to set some context, renewable energy, why is it important? Why is this even funded through the federal government at the moment and through these state programs? There are many reasons why renewable energy is important in a broader context, but I'm just going to briefly touch on two. Climate change mitigation, of course, is one, and then that practical piece of financial savings and financial resiliency, which is something that we all care about. So to talk about climate change a little bit, we know we have climate change. We are feeling those impacts already, and we have impacts that are affecting us here in the Pacific Northwest, local impacts, projected impacts, and current impacts that we're already feeling. And these are impacts on our forests, on our wildlife, and even impacts directly on humans. So with our forests, we're looking at intensified wildfires and extended wildfire seasons. We've already, definitely seen and felt some of those impacts. We're looking at intensified insect and disease pressure and drought stress on our forests. We're already seeing that with certain species, such as western red cedar, with western hemlock. Some of those species, we're already noticing these problems. And then, predicted into the future are these possible species range shifts or extinctions. And then with our wildlife, marine heat waves, we several years ago experienced the blob out there in the Pacific Ocean, which was a substantial marine heat wave. And these have big impacts and effects on our marine mammals and our fish species. And then, of course, you don't live in the Pacific Northwest without knowing about salmon. And with climate change, unfortunately, we have increased heat and disease pressures on our already struggling salmon species. We're looking at phenological mismatch research and research on specific species, especially in the Cascades, and how they're affected by lower snowpacks and things like that. So lots of implications for our wildlife. And then those human implications as well. Increased heat-related illnesses. We could insert in here wildfire-related illness, as we all remember just a few weeks ago, living through the smoke that we all endured. Luckily, we didn't have the fire to contend with on top of that, as many of our fellow Washingtonians did. But, health-related illnesses can increase with these climate change impacts. Yield reduction in food crops due to many factors, whether that be drought, whether it be intense heat, whether it be substantial flooding, new disease and insect pressures. And then winter and summer recreation losses with reduced snowpacks. We are sometimes seeing, shorter ski seasons. With reduced summer flows in our rivers. We're looking at fishing, implications for sports fishing and things like that. And then increasing costs to infrastructure. looking at changing our infrastructure due to increased flooding, hydrological things, due to wildfire, due to increased heat, all of those types of things. So some of the impacts that are, you know, either here or coming our way with climate change. And when we're dealing with climate change, we have sort of these two baskets of strategies that we can pull from to address some of these impacts. One of those baskets would be adaptation strategies. And that would be that rebuilding of infrastructure, or possibly looking at different crops to plant or different trees to plant in our forests. But saying, okay, we know these changes are coming, we're already feeling some of these changes. How can we adapt to those changes? And then we have mitigation strategies. And what mitigation strategies are doing are looking at really focusing in on those greenhouse gas emissions. And they're saying, okay, either, you know, how can we reduce those emissions in the first place? And once we have greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, what technologies exist or can we invent that can sequester some of those greenhouse gases back out of the atmosphere and store them long term? So those would be mitigation strategies. And clearly, alternative energy falls into that mitigation strategy for climate change. So this is definitely a strategy that federal levels of government, state levels of government, city levels of government, all different levels, NGOs, nonprofits, lots of different actors are looking at, their funding, their, you know, championing this alternative energy as a mitigation strategy for combating climate change. And then there's just that practical aspect of alternative energy, and that's the financial savings. And just to give a basic idea, these are the numbers for an average American home, right? 1,500 square feet, 4-member family, and the average amount of electricity that they might use in a month. And then the average cost of power for the United States, and then what that would equate to as the average cost of electricity per month, about $112. Then this shows the installation of solar on an average American home here. Enough solar to meet 100% of the energy needs. And it shows, first off, an increase in the home value of about $38,000. And then over the lifespan of that solar installation, which is about 25 to 30 years, over the lifespan of that installation, about a $55,000 cost savings in energy bills, which can be pretty substantial for an average American family. Now that's just an average American family. Imagine, you know, if you have a farm or a small business and your energy needs are double or triple or quadruple what this average home looks like. You know, maybe you have a cooling system, maybe you have processing equipment that you have to run, or extensive lighting or heating or things like that. The costs of energy for a lot of small farms, big farms, rural small businesses can be pretty substantial. So getting something like a solar installation can really see over the lifespan of that installation, you can really be realizing a lot of cost savings. And we're gonna take a moment here and watch the little farm tour. This is Raising Cane Ranch. They are a small farm on Swan Trail Slough, right? They're kind of sandwiched in between the Snohomish River and Swan Trail Slough. And they, like I said before, allowed us to come and do a little virtual farm tour since we didn't get to go there in person. And they recently this year went through this REAP application and they got solar installed on their farm. And so I will go ahead and see if I can play this and hopefully, oops, all right, let's go back. All right. Okay, so we're here with Nick and Melissa at their farm Raising Cane Ranch, and they recently went through the REDA.
Hey, Carrie, it stopped, so maybe don't mute yourself for sure.
Grant and did a REDA application and got solar installed on their farm. And they're going to tell us a little bit about what motivated them to get that solar, what their energy needs are, and what they're trying to meet. And yeah, so take it away.
Yeah, why we did solar? Well, we did solar about 10 years ago. We put in a small system on a front barn that's adjacent to the road, and it was just kind of a poster of like solar, and it really looked cool, and did provide a lot of our energy needs, but it just provided a little. And then the Conservation District in Carrie came along and said there was a new grant out there that was I interested in trying it. And so we learned a little bit about it, learned that there was a lot of good incentives, financial incentives, and metering incentives. And we looked into it. We hired a company, Forecast Solar, to give us a bid. And the bid and all the incentives involved really looked like a really good deal. It was actually, we ended up spending as much for a system that's 10 times as large as our first system. We spent the same amount of money because solar has really come down in the last 10 years. So, yeah, primarily with the financial incentive.
Well, and I think just the environmental part of it too. I mean, we want to be able to generate clean electricity to power the farm ideally. I think the whole farm, especially as we look at branching out into a cidery operation, and it just kind of fits with our whole philosophy of how we've done farming with taking a more kind of blended ecological approach with how to integrate that with agriculture and stewardship. So as part of the River Valley and everything, I think it fits with everything we've wanted to do. So,
definitely fits. We have the space, we have the buildings to install it on, and it will provide 100% of our energy needs and possibly generate some more for the grid.
So this is our art orchard where we invite the public in to come and do yew picking. We started out, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, originally with raspberries, and that was pretty successful. But at some point, our raspberries started declining. They had a root rot. It was related to the drainage here in the patch. We kind of pivoted and did some other berries, blackberries, several varieties of blackberries, tayberries. And then ultimately, as our raspberries started dying here, we started replanting with apples. We have about a dozen different, mostly heirloom varieties of apples. Again, everything is organic here in the patch. And this time with the apple planting, Nick did companion planting, which for us means that around each apple tree, we planted daffodils as kind of a pest deterrent. And then we also planted this large leafy plant called comfrey. Comfrey has a large taproot. It goes very deep and it brings nutrients up from deep in the soil. And then when the plants are mature, we chop the leaves down, and then those nutrients are more readily available for the apple trees. So that's the concept there. But this will probably be our first official fall opening for having apple pickers. We have some pears as well. And it's been a really fun experience in general. whether it's berries or apples, just having the public come out here and sample and pick and just relax out in the kind of more peaceful countryside. So it's been really fun. Okay, so this is another agroforestry practice that is here on the farm, and this is alley cropping, and these are little baby cider apple trees that were established maybe about 4 years ago, and they're planted in this pretty wide spacing so that in between these rows, Nick can still cut hay for his cows. And then as these get older and more productive, this is some of the fruit that will be used for their new cidery that they're going to do. So again, those ecological benefits, when we get trees onto the farm, lots of soil health implications, hydrologic implications. And again, this is built off of a hedgerow on an agricultural ditch. I don't know if you can turn and see that, to sort of increase that tree structure off of that waterway and give those extra benefits for that specific water. All right, so we're here at the back of the property. In the back there, we see a riparian buffer along Swan Trail. I don't know if you can see me. I think I walked out of it. Or along Swan Trail Slough. And this right here is a little food forest that we see coming off of that native planting, that native buffer. And we've got a lot of different species combined in here. We've got some nut trees, some hazelnuts, some walnuts, some chestnuts, and then lots of different berry species. Nick here is holding aronia berry, which is very productive this year, it looks like. A highly nutritious berry used for its antioxidants. It's known as a superfood these days. Lots of currants planted in here, which you guys have found a pretty good market for this year. And you guys are doing U-pick for a lot of the berries, which are now productive. The trees are going to take longer to be productive, but right now, while those trees are getting bigger, we have these berries that are productive. So yeah, really cool little multi-species system in here, making that native riparian buffer off the waterway larger and adding that ecological benefit to the space. Anything you guys want to say? Do you see more birds? Do you think this is bringing birds that are coming to eat berries, or just habitat for,
No, I don't see a whole lot of different birds yet.
but it will be probably.
I can imagine.
You're not having problems with birds getting to your berries.
No birds really.
Okay.
Picking these, eating these berries.
Okay.
And the deer haven't really chewed up much. Haven't seen that much foraging from there. And then I'd imagine once the nuts get really moving, we'll get some squirrels eventually. We don't really have squirrels back here.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Cool. All right. Good. Oh. All right, so we are here in actually the native riparian buffer that is planted along Swan Trail Slough. And there's this beautiful little pathway through here that you can see. And this buffer, how old is this buffer? When did you guys get this planted? Do you remember? Is it about
No, I don't know that
maybe
answer.
7 years ago? When did we plant this
7, 8
riparian
years.
buffer? See, you need to be in this thing with me. It's about 10, so probably about 10 years old, and we can see it's gotten a lot of great growth already in 10 years, and it really doing its job well, but also providing this beautiful walkway, this beautiful space that people can walk through and can see all the new bird species that have been invited to the farm now that this lovely plant life is in here, these trees and shrubs. And yeah, it's just become this really beautiful feature of the farm and provides this great ecological benefit to the waterway that flows through here. Yeah. And I'm sure that there's, with the trees during kind of flood season, that is helpful for absorbing excess water back here. The only challenge we've had is that we have to deal with beavers a little more. Right. They also like these trees, so that's been a little bit of a trick to figure out, how to deal with them. But I'd say that's pretty mild compared to all the, pluses and enjoyment we get out of it. All right, thank you. Yeah, there's some stressful stuff, that goes on. Come on, Poppy. Oh, that big guy. Hey, Daddy. Thank you guys so much for letting us help. Yes. Oh yeah, he's gonna dig right now. That's there we go. Good action, guys. Oh, how you can. Oh, he like digs his horn down in there and brings him over here. Yay. He must be really mellow. He's very mellow. He's kind of keeping the baby line. There's a shot for you. I got him very excited. I'm very happy man. Wow. Well done, everybody. Run away, girl. Look at it. Oh. You're gonna find it too. Yeah. That's it. Fly is biting him on his belly. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you to Raising Cane Ranch for letting us, tour their farm a little bit. You can see they have a lot going on. They raise the Scottish Highland cattle, and they have quite a few agroforestry practices. Native riparian buffer on Swan Trail Slough. They do alley cropping. They have a food forest, and then they have the U-Pick apple orchard as well. So a lot going on, and part of the reason they went through this REAP program was because they have existing energy needs and then future energy needs with their plans to open a cidery for all the different apple varieties that they're now installing on their farm. So to get into a little more detail about this program and some of the financial incentives that are available right now for doing solar and some of these other types of projects, there is currently a federal tax credit. This year in 2020, that federal tax credit is 26%. Next year, it drops to 22%. And the following year, it will drop to 10% for commercial systems only. So if you're considering solar or something, along those lines, or someone who is, taking note of this and maybe planning to get on board next year, might be a good idea if you want to take advantage of a decent federal tax credit, because after next year, things, may be falling off quite a bit. There used to be some state solar incentives, although those have been spent out as of now. So those don't exist anymore, but there are some sales tax exemptions. People can take advantage of the MACRS depreciation. There are sometimes through local utilities energy efficiency incentives that your local utility may have. There are NRCS energy efficiency projects. NRCS can take time to go through their system, but if you're a farm that is already plugged in with them, it might be worth exploring some of these projects with them as well and seeing if they have any funding for this to marry onto these other incentives. And then there is the REAP grant, which is what we are talking about. So that REAP grant offers 25% of the total cost of the project. It is run sort of like our traditional cost share projects. It's a reimbursable grant. So that means that you would pay for the system up front, you would pay for that installation, you would pay for those energy efficiency upgrades, and then once those are done, and once you've been accepted to the grant, you would then get reimbursed the 25% of the cost of that project. So when you stack that with the federal tax credit, that's, you know, not too bad. And then if you can stack in some of these other incentives, the cost of these projects can be pretty reasonable. There are also, you know, if you don't have that money up front to pay for a project, you know, some of these projects can be bigger, especially depending on your energy needs. We've done applications for everything from, you know, a $20,000 project all the way up to, you know, $300,000 and above. So depending on the cost of that project, if you don't have that money up front, there are banks in the area that will do low interest loans for you to finance these projects. And you can also check with the bank that you use, your local bank. Some banks are willing to help you come up with some kind of financing for these projects. So some of the incentives that exist to get going on these. I'm not really going to talk about, this is an ugly slide, I'm not going to talk about it. It kind of shows what I initially showed before, that, you know, you install this project, you can save a certain amount of money over the life of the project. It shows the stacking of some incentives. But yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that ugly slide, charts and numbers and stuff. So what kinds of projects are eligible under this program? So solar, of course, we saw that. That is probably the most popular use of this grant money. Solar heating projects, micro hydro projects, wind, bioenergy, and energy efficiency. We've done applications for, you know, changing out a furnace to a more energy efficiency one, or changing to heat pumps, or all kinds of other things. So lots of different possibilities with this grant. It's not just about solar. Who qualifies? Again, we touched on that. Agricultural producers, anyone who's farming, and farming as a commercial business, and then any rural small business. And there is a USDA map that we use to see if you actually qualify as a rural small business. A lot, you know, of certain areas in Snohomish County, like Everett, you know, clearly if you live near Seattle, you know, some of those, you know, more anyway, busier places, more dense populations, they're clearly not rural. But places like Arlington, Stanwood, you know, Granite Falls, some of those areas, if you have a small business in that area, you may qualify for this grant as well. There are deadlines, so we're not continually always turning in these grant applications. There are 2 deadlines within a year. Fall of 2020, the deadline is in October, so we're kind of past that point. We're wrapping up our current applications now. And the October deadline, these are reoccurring every year. And that October deadline usually is for projects that are $80,000 or less. And then in the spring each year, by the end of March, there's another deadline, and those are for projects of any size. So it could be for a smaller project, but it's usually for those larger projects that are above $80,000. So yeah, these two deadlines each year, these two cutoffs for when you would actually want to submit one of these grants. And I will say, if this is something that interests you, I wouldn't wait till March, to start exploring this. If you know there's that spring cutoff that you might want to meet or consider meeting, I would start exploring this in January. Find someone who could do an energy audit for you, find someone who could give you some bids on solar, and start getting your paperwork together. Contact myself and see if you qualify. And start that process several months out, because if you wait till March, you probably are not going to get in for the deadline. It can take some time to get these grant applications completed. Some disclaimers. Funding notice hasn't been posted yet. It has been for this cutoff here in October, but for 2021, funding has not been posted yet. We anticipate that funding will be there, but we'll see. We're just waiting to hear. The grant program is competitive and it is increasing. And there's just a lot of people that are interested in taking advantage of this, and there's limited funding. So just be aware of that. Just because you submit an application doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to get approved for funding. And the current paperwork that we use to submit these applications is, we're told by USDA, going to be going away, and we're going to be getting they're redoing all their paperwork for some reason, and we're going to be getting a whole new format for submitting these grant applications. So that will be something we will be working through next year as well. So how can we help you? How does this program help you if you are interested in doing something like this on your farm or on your rural small business? We can provide you technical assistance. So, first off, you can give us a phone call and we can answer, any questions you might have about this program. We can help you find qualified contractors if you are having trouble finding that. And of course, we offer that assistance to actually help you apply for the REAP grant. We work closely with you and with your contractor to get all of that paperwork that we need, and then we put that grant together for you, and we turn it over to you for your signatures and for you to be able to submit that to the USDA. And then, we may be able to connect you with other resources that you might need as you go through this process. So that is the gist, and I am open to any questions if they've arisen at this point. And I can't see any questions.
No
So,
questions through the Q&A yet.
okay.
But Carrie, is there a maximum amount of money, since some of the projects can range and the amount you get back is based on a percentage? Is there a maximum amount you can get rewarded back?
I don't think so. I think you can go pretty high. Because the highest form we have is 200,000 and above. So it doesn't put any cap.
Awesome. And then I'm sure Kari's been checking if there's any questions live on Facebook, which we might not have. But yeah.
And if there aren't, I didn't put my contact information on a slide here, but I'm always willing to take phone calls, answer emails. Probably email is the best way to get a hold of me at this point, since we're obviously not working in our offices at the moment. We're all working from home. So shooting me an email to answer any questions that may come up if you're interested in this process. I am open to that as well.
There aren't any questions on Facebook right now. What I would say is I do have solar panels on my house, and so I know about the tax credit and those incentives, and it's kind of amazing, at least in my experience, how quickly it paid for itself. And that number that you presented, that $55,000 of cost savings, I'm sure that in time I'll get to some number like that, but it's also interesting to hear that it improves home value. And I think that's probably a function of where we're going, is that people are becoming more reliant on themselves, and it's nice to be self-sufficient at your property, and especially for a farm, because they're some of the most innovative people I know. So that was really cool to see the farm tour too. So
yeah, these systems, you know, even if you do finance it up front or something like that, these systems can turn around and pay themselves off pretty quickly. Especially, you know, I know we did an application for a farm. Their energy costs were something like $800 a month. They had some processing equipment. They had a lot going on. And of course, you know, once that solar was installed, they did finance the project up front. Once that solar was installed, they took that savings that they were getting every month and just rolled that right back into the loan, of course, and then just pay that loan off, I think, within like, 6 or 7 years or something like that. So yeah, they can pay themselves off pretty quickly, and then that's just savings then. That's just cake once you've got that done.
So another question from me, we know about solar panels, that one seems the most obvious, but what would wind look like in terms of a project on a farm?
I've never worked with wind before, so I haven't gone through a project like that. I mean, the application process would be very similar to a solar project. You know, it doesn't matter what you pick, the actual REAP process is going to be the same. We're going to need the same kind of information from you to fill out the grant application. But yeah, I'm not a wind expert, and not having gone through one of those projects with someone, I don't know what that would look like. It'd be interesting. I'm not that familiar with the wind technology.
And the other one that I would ask about, just because it's interesting, the biomass, am I thinking correctly that that might be something tied to like the digesters we have a few of in our area, where it's regenerated?
Yeah. So there's lots of different technologies out there that could be worked through this grant application. It's just that solar seems to be that low-hanging fruit, that one that people just is kind of a no-brainer, and that's the easy one to do at this point. Yeah. So, but you can be creative with it.
Love it. That's great. Still no questions on Facebook.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Last call for questions then.
and sounds good. If no questions come in, like I said, you know, if you think about, you know, you're sitting and thinking about this and you're exploring it, and questions come up at a later time, feel free to contact me.
Perfect. And I did chat out to folks your email address, Carrie.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
Perfect. Well, we really appreciate your time, Carrie. The video was great. And I hope that some applications come in for you.
And thank you to Sarah for shooting that video and for editing it all together for us. Yay, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last call happened, so we're going to shut it down. Thanks.
Bye.
We appreciate you turning in. Have a great day.
Thanks.